everyone, it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to this week's Sketch Sunday video, even though it's Monday. We're going to be doing art journaling page based off of this sketch from My Favorite Things. As always, the link to the sketch will be posted below in the more information section. So we're going to do the art journaling page and use some products that I've never used before. There's that red gelato that we're going to use. We're going to be using the stitched rectangle in and out dies from My Favorite Things, and we're going to create a window. As you can see, I taped them together and I cut out the little pieces for the interior of the window. We use the smallest die to do the planter box that's going to go at the bottom. That is the Crafter's Workshop stencil that we're going to be using with some embossing paste and some Hero Arts shadow ink in Red Royal mid-tone. So to get started, I taped the die to the page so to kind of put it in place so that I don't get any of the gelato or the modeling paste on the paper. So we're going to put the gelato all over the paper, just kind of scribbling it on, and I'm going to use a baby wipe to move the color around. Now these baby wipes have gotten dry in the move, and so I just dipped it in the cup of water that I had sitting on my desk. And I don't know if that's the way they're supposed to be, that it kind of blended the color out to really, really light, or if I just put too much water on the baby wipe. So I'm just kind of going to go back over and scribble in places and just go through until I get the color that I like. It took me a couple tries, and I liked how when you went over it in different directions, you got a different kind of grain to it. So I really like this technique, and I think I'm going to be using it in future projects. I did like the gelatos. It's the first time I've ever used it on a project, and I think it turned out pretty good. I was pretty happy with the way that the gelato worked. Now I did gesso the page before, so I think it went on a little bit smoother than if I hadn't done it, and maybe the color might have come out a little bit darker if I hadn't gessoed the page, but I decided to. So the next step that I'm going to get ready to do is I'm going to go back through and just smooth out a little bit more of the color. And then we're going to go on to creating the colored modeling paste. So there's a spatula that I have from one of the sets from Michael's, and I'm going to put a little bit of the modeling paste onto the craft mat. The craft mats are fantastic for this kind of thing because it wipes up so nice and easy. So I put the modeling paste down, and then I'm going to put some of the ink onto the craft mat, and then I'm going to smush it down. Now, because it's white and going into red, it's going to create a very, very light pink. So the next couple minutes, you're really just going to see me trying to figure out how to create a really red color. So I went back over and I added more ink, and I kept going back and forth. And this kind of caused the paste to dry out a little bit. I needed to be quicker with this, but again, I've never really done mixing of the colors for the modeling paste. I think that I may actually go get colored modeling paste, because this was a little bit of a pain. So I kept adding more red to it, and then I had modeling paste all over the craft mat. You'll see in a couple minutes that I'm going to add some My Favorite Things black licorice hybrid ink into the mix, because when you are painting, you add a little bit of black to make the color darker, you add white to make it lighter, and black to make it darker. It kind of worked. I'm not sure that I would do that over again. As you can see, I'm kind of just covering my entire craft mat with this to try to get the color that I wanted. So it definitely took me a very, very long time to get the modeling paste the way that I wanted. So there you go. I'm adding the black ink, and then you can see it kind of muddies it, and it's very dark and it's very black. So it did take a while. I probably should have edited this out, but I wanted to show you guys what I did to create that color. So I'm going to add more red ink into it, and it's just kind of a trial and error process. Again, I've never done this before, so this was another new technique, and I find that art journaling is really good for that. If you want to just try out new techniques, new supplies, things like that, that's kind of what I'm using my art journaling for, and I'm really enjoying it. I found it to be a little bit intimidating at first, but I'm actually really liking just kind of giving myself the freedom to do something and knowing that I can just paint over it if I don't like the way it came out. So I finally was happy with the color red that I had, so I moved the craft mat over a little bit so that I could put the page more into focus. So at this point, the modeling paste had dried a little bit because it had taken me so long to do this. So it wasn't going on as smoothly as it normally does, and I don't know if maybe it's this paste or if it's just because I took too long, but I'm assuming that it's because of that. So I'm going to do this in 3 different places because things look best in odd numbers, and honestly I didn't have that much modeling paste left. So I went back over and just did it in 3 small sections, but then in a couple minutes you'll see that I went back in and added a little bit more because I thought it looked too sparse at the end. But I was happy with the way this color red actually turned out. So I'm going to go wipe off the modeling paste and then I'll be right back. So you can see I can't leave well enough alone, so I added 2 more layers of bricks so that they would be in a group of 5. And it wasn't exactly the same color red, so I couldn't get it to the same color, and I got tired of trying to play with the modeling paste. So it came out a little bit thicker and a little bit better, but it is a lighter color. So I think it was actually me playing around with it that was giving me the problem for the first ones. Okay, so now the modeling paste is almost dry, but I'm going to put that to the side so that we can start working on the window frame. So I cut out these 2 little white pieces, and there's the planter box. And I wanted to add some flowers on top of it to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. And these flowers are ones that I got from Recollection stamp sets, and I'm going to be using some ombre ink to stamp the flowers out in. So now
Tried to dry, and then I wanted to do the window. And as I was talking, I was thinking I wanted it to look cracked and old. So I was going to use some tea dye distress ink, and then I realized that I had this distress crackle paint, which is supposed to do, it says, apply medium fine cracks to thick for heavier cracks, coat of paint and let it dry. So we're going to try this out because we can always redo the window, it's not that big a deal. So I wanted it to be kind of like old, and there's a little bit of crackling here and there, so I wanted to apply it to the window, and we'll see what happens with this. I'm not covering it completely, just going to go and cover bits and pieces of it, so that there is some crackle. Some pieces are heavier than others, so we will see what kind of results this gets. So if this does not work and it does not crackle and do the effect that I think it will, then I'm just going to go back in with some tea dye distress ink and kind of make it look a little bit aged. But what I do want to do is take these pieces and do some of that, just give it a little bit of an aged look on the side. The tea dye actually gives it a nice aged look. If you ever did projects in school where you had to make like a letter look really old and you use tea bags and dip them into water and then dip the paper in or something like that, this is the effect that it'll get with that. So I don't want it to be completely brown, but I just want it to have a little bit of a distressed, warm look. The paint is drying. Not really see much happening right now. Distress ink will also give shadowing effects. That's one of the best ways to use them. How you can use them to create highlights and shadows on your project. They really give depth and dimension to die cuts when you use either Solid or Cricut and you're cutting things out. It will give really nice results. If you saw the last video that I did for the book for the art journal, I did it was a fantasy theme, so I did a princess castle and a princess, and I used distress inks on that, and it came out really, really good. I really like the way that it came out. There's a lot of, in person you can see a lot of shadows and highlights and stuff like that. So this is still drying. I don't know if we see anything yet. It may not actually do anything. I don't know. But we'll wait for it to dry, and while we're doing that, I am going to work on the other piece. We'll work on the planter box piece. So it's going to go on the bottom like this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a square of white cardstock and then do flowers on top of it, kind of just make it full of flowers, and then at the bottom we're going to put a little bit of
but I just wanted to show you that that was from the smallest die from the set. Now we're actually going to start working on the flowers. These are all flowers from the Recollection stamp sets that I got a couple weeks ago. And we're going to start with the bigger flowers, and I want to make sure the flowers at the top are full, and the ones at the bottom don't have to be full flowers because we're going to actually cut around them to make it look like the flowers at the bottom are underneath the plant. And we're going to make it actually curved at the top. We're going to do some cutting out. So now using these ombre inks, if you've never used them before, you kind of have to do a cha-cha motion so that there's not a harsh line in between where the two colors are. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to keep picking some flowers, doing the bigger ones first, and then going in using the smaller ones to fill in the gaps. So once that's done, I'm going to use my cutter bee scissors to cut it out. I'm sorry that this part got cut off, but I needed to actually see the flowers to cut around them. And that's really all I'm doing, is cutting out the white pieces so it looks like an actual planter box and not a rectangle with flowers just stamped on it. Tried to make it a little bit more realistic. So that's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to take my Zig 2A glue pen and put a layer of glue down. And of course, because it needs a little bit of time to set, I didn't actually get it to stick. And it's a little bit harder because of the die, the diagonal die cut in there. So I just went over the flowers and then stuck it together. And that is the planter box. And now there's the window. I wasn't really crazy about the way that it was coming out. I didn't see as many cracks in it. I do have other colors of the crackle paint that I'm definitely going to have to try and see if that has a different effect to it. So now we're going to go back to the book. We're going to let the window dry. The embossing paste is pretty much dried on this at this point, and I realized that there's too stark of a difference between the background red and the embossing paste red. So what I'm going to do is go back in with a little bit more of the gelato. So I taped the dies back down to the white piece to protect that. And I'm just using the same baby wipe and the same gelato to go over and add a little bit more color and texture to the piece. I thought that I really liked some of that red, but I was kind of disappointed that it was rubbing off. So I just wanted to keep adding a little bit of layers to it. And this paper is actually gessoed, so I don't know if that's maybe why it was coming off a little bit easier. It was a more smooth surface. It didn't actually be able to grit into the tooth of the paper. So maybe that's what it was, the fact that I used gesso. But again, I've never used these gelatos before, so I'm not sure how that works. So in a minute, you're going to see that after this, I decide that it's still not red enough for me. So I wanted to go back in with some Distress ink in Barn Door. I wanted to see if Distress ink, 1, could go over gelatos, and 2, if it would make it redder, which it did. So I'm just going to go over those pieces, and again, it gives it another layer of dimension and some shadowing and highlights. And then after this, I decide, okay, well, sometimes using black soot, the black Distress ink, actually gives it a little bit of dimension. So I wanted to use some vintage photo. So I went in with that, and that's a dark brown, and you can see me using it there. And I did not like the way that it looked. I didn't think that it came out good. I think actually at first I used tea dye, and then I went back in with there you go, that's vintage photo. Wasn't crazy about the way that it came out, so I kind of wiped some of it off and then went back in with a little bit more of the red, the Barn Door red Distress ink to kind of cover that up. Again, it's fun to play around with things and see how they work out. So I was taking the dies off there, and then I just wasn't sure if I was loving the page. I kind of thought that I needed to take a little bit of a break, but I wanted to show you guys the page. I didn't think that I was going to come back and finish it tonight, but I actually did. I took a break, had dinner, and then I decided to come back and finish the project because I couldn't leave well enough alone. I was excited to get down and back into the craft room and create and finish this piece in one day. So in a minute, you're going to actually see the finished piece.
Okay, so I finished the page off tonight. I didn't think I was going to, but I came back downstairs after I finished dinner because I was just so curious to see how the window turned out. And I wanted to try to show you this page the best that I can. I really need to get a better overhead camera. I use my iPad to do these videos. If anybody has any suggestions on good arms or display pieces that would hold the iPad to do video overhead, feel free to make suggestions. I'm all ears when it comes to that. I really need a better system at this point. Anyway, getting back to finishing this page,
this is the
I
product.
took the window after I let it dry and actually put this
What I did was I
stamp block on top of it and kind of flatten it out for a little bit.
block
You can kind of see some
over
crackles. I'm not completely thrilled with the way the crackle went. I think because it was a white, I think that I have to mix it with something, and maybe that'll do more of an effect. I'm going to try another page with the, I have a black crackle candy, I think it's called candy rock, rock candy, it's a very sparkly one, so I'm going to see if those actually come out a little bit better. Anyway, not thrilled about that, the way the window came out, but for the background piece, I cut a piece that was a little bit smaller than the window frame, and I took the stippling brushes. Now these are from Sticky Echo, and they're from Pocket 2. I took the smaller one, and just used some scattered straw distressing, and I just pounced on the back of this. I mainly did it around the light, because obviously that's where the light would be coming from, is that lamp right there, and then around the window frame, the T in the window, because that's again where the shadows would be. I glued the flower box onto the front of it, and this is actually covering up some ink stains I have in my hands. I actually got some ink on this, so that actually covers it perfectly. I also, I'm a little bit messy today when I was doing this, and I got a little water dot over here, so I used some glossy accents on the window box, just to kind of cover it up. You can't see it as well, you can see it more in person than you can on camera. Or maybe it's just because I know it's there. So the table was done with a oval punch from Fiskars, and I used some red barn door distressing to color it in, the same one that I did on the back here, color on the front. I used some scrap pieces of red cardstock to create the leg, which you can probably only see one. The other one is behind the shadow box, or the flower box. This lamp is from a 3 stamp set from Zero Art, and this kind of reminded me of an old time, like a little older lamp. So I cut that out, and then I went around the edges with a CNG black marker. It's the same marker that I went around that I colored over the legs with, because the legs were red cardstock. Glued that all down, and then tapped the window up on some dimensionals. Now, I think I've seen some of my other videos where I talk about dimensionals. These are the dimensionals that I got. They are from $1 or $1.50 bin at Michael's, depending on how Michael's is. I see $1 and $1.50 bins. But once the middles are all done, this is how it looks. And here's frugal. Like me, I like to use all of my supplies. Don't throw these away. You can actually cut them, and then take the backing off of them, and you can actually get more out of it. So you get the 100 bucks, and then the pieces that go behind it. And I think that I paid about 80 cents for most of the ones that I got, because I used, I usually get them more than 20% off coupon, and they're relatively inexpensive.
Very
So,
inexpensive,
for
and I
100
feel like they
bucks,
work
and then a bunch of
just
extra
as
stickers,
well.
it's definitely worth it. And I like them better than the dots, 3D dots, or anything, any of the other
So
foam dots that
I
I
was
use.
pretty happy with
Because I
the
find
way the page
comfortable or
turned
even better.
out. It's not the
So,
best
other
one
than
that
that,
I've
I stuck
ever
this down
done,
with
but
some
again,
matte medium
I'm just
in that jar, and
experimenting. I got to
we'll see
use
the final product.
several different items that I've never used before. So I was
I
happy
don't
to
love it,
play
but the
around
concept behind
and
it is
see what I
to
can
create
do
something
with
that you just kind of play around
So
with.
I'm
You use
really
your
liking this
I'm
art
using
journaling
this
thing.
as
If you're finding it
the learning process for me.
intimidating,
It's a
just
technique.
start with a
And
smaller
because this is
journal and
my
just
first
know
journaling
that
piece,
you
I
can
use the
paint
Untitled
over
Chapter for mine.
anything
So
that
I'm
you've
super
done. You
happy
can
with
gesso
this.
over it and start over. So I think that's what helps me a little bit. So I'm talking about the embossing piece. It's the first time I've ever colored. Actually, it's the second time I ever colored. This is the first time I made this card for my mom who had surgery the other day. And I am going to hopefully get better at it and trying it more and more times. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching. Comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. If you're not a subscriber, please feel free to hit that subscribe button so you see all of my art journaling and my other project videos. And I will see you guys real soon again for another video. Bye!